welcome, and thank you for joining me here on Wednesday, September 21st, 2022, with the very first episode of Redshirt Roundup. Yeah, we had episode 0 yesterday, but now this is episode 1, and it's the only college football podcast you need to be listening to. My name is Zack, and I hope you join me on this wild roller coaster that is college football. Before we get into that, though, and what happened in week 3, let's do some housekeeping. I'll only ask you to do this at the top of the show and at the end of the show. Please leave a comment anywhere you're listening: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, anywhere. Like, share, subscribe, rate, whatever you need to do. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. This past weekend, week 3 of college football, we had some teams crumble, some teams bounce back. We saw a Big Ten team go into SEC country for the first time and send the crowd packing before the fourth quarter. We had Jimbo Fisher get that crucial win against the Miami Hurricanes. We had Herm Edwards out at ASU. But is that the best of the Pac-12? Are we seeing what the Pac-12 can really bring us? Is the AP poll truly showing the full picture of the current landscape of what's happening across the country in college football? That and more on this episode of Redshirt Roundup. But first, let's talk about the Pac-12. Let's talk about Michael Penix Jr. The arm on that man is insane. A transfer from Indiana, a former Hoosier, and he's lighting up the West Coast right now, and no one's really talking about him because he plays for the Washington Huskies, who was unranked before this game against Michigan State. He's currently second in the FBS with 1,079 passing yards in just 3 games, right behind Tulsa quarterback Davis Brin. Penix Jr. and the Huskies took down the 11th ranked Michigan State Spartans and showed the college football world that the Pac-12 is more than just USC. Penix Jr. went 24 for 40 with almost 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's nearly 10 yards per pass. 3 of those touchdowns went to his wide receiver, Jalen Polk, who had a stellar game with 153 receiving yards and only 6 receptions. And what I like about Penix Jr. is he's not a runner, but he can scramble out of the pocket. We saw that with a touchdown to Jalen Polk. But he has one of the prettiest spirals and has just a command over this offense, which I think is huge for quarterbacks. I think if you're not a leader, and he is the leader of that offense, you can feel the team playing behind him. And watching other teams, like you're watching Michigan when Cade was in there, you could tell that they just weren't gelling with him. And when we put JJ McCarthy in there, it all kind of came together. And just like Michael Penix Jr., he just commands the team, leads the team, and shows them that this is the Huskies that people have to be scared of. The crowd at the Husky Stadium had his back, and he was just magical to see. Seeing this team come from a 4-8 season in 2021 with a new head coach, brand new head coach this season, and show the kind of heart and tenacity against the top 15 team in college football, that's what I love about it. That's exactly why I make this podcast, why we're creating something to talk about how amazing this sport is. Not many people will focus on this game because it's a Pac-12 team, but I would watch out for those Huskies. This is a West Coast team that just hasn't really been talked about. They really haven't been that great, but I think this year it might be all different. We have a quarterback who trusts the wide receivers. If Michael Penix Jr. can continue to do what he's doing, I could see him in talks for the Heisman, honestly. He has trust in his wide receivers. His wideouts trust him. And that first long pass in the opening drive to McMillan showed me all I needed to see and understand about Michael Penix Jr. I think Michael Penix Jr. and his Husky team can go all the way to the Pac-12 championship. They don't really have a hard road. It's not super difficult. But I think they go to that Pac-12 championship, probably face USC. And I have no idea what's going to happen there. We'll have to see how this shapes out. Right now, we're only week 3, about to be in week 4. And I think right around now is kind of where we start getting a shift of teams finding their identity, seeing what they have to offer. They kind of figured out this is what we need to work on. This is where we're struggling. And I think they're fine tuning those things. And I think we're going to see kind of where teams actually stand here coming into week 4, going into week 5, and really just show the world this is what our team is about. See, with the head coach, Kalen DeBear, he was out of Fresno and brought a sense of pride and hard work to UW. And I think that showed in this game against the Michigan State Spartans. In his introduction speech as head coach, he talked about how he wants to be persistent and resilient. And that's exactly what happened when Michigan State seemed to be gaining momentum in the second half. But I think it was too late. I think it was too late for Michigan State to come back. And that interception really, after they stopped him on 4th and goal, and then right after that threw a pick, I think it was over by that point. First downs, they were about even. Time of possession, they were about even. But that single turnover really sealed the deal. The run game never got started because the Spartans were always playing from behind. When you play from behind, it's really hard to get the run game going because it takes so long. You don't gain a lot of yards usually. I mean, unless you're Penn State. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I just think that it was just too late. Peyton Thorne, a junior out of Naperville, Illinois, the quarterback for the Spartans, he had a great game, but he never looked comfortable in that pocket. 30 for 42 with 323 yards and 3 touchdowns. Without the run game, though, he just had to continue to throw the ball and try to stay this game. And wore him out. Couldn't get comfortable in the pocket. They always had the same kind of pass scheme, and it just didn't work. But they have a chance, I think, in the Big Ten. I don't think they'll do anything great, but, they'll still have a chance. They go on to play undefeated Minnesota. I think that's going to be a great game. This is going to be a fun game to watch. I think it's going to show what Michigan State and Mel Tucker can do. If he's able to rally those troops and bring this team around, Spartans and Golden Gopher game is one to watch on Saturday. It is hard, though, for the Michigan State to come in with so much hype and have a Washington team that has no hype. So you're not looking at this game as it's gonna be. It's not easy. I don't think they looked at it as an easy game, but I think they looked at it as an unranked team. But I'm interested to see what Michigan State does from here. And like I said, they play the Minnesota Golden Gophers, and who unfortunately just lost a wide receiver, Ottman Bell, due to a leg injury. But I think it'll show exactly what kind of team this is. And like I said, this is a weekend 4, week 5, that we really get to see teams develop, teams show who they are. And if Michigan State can rally behind Peyton Thorne and Mel Tucker, I think we can see a good team. We could see a fun Michigan State game, fun Michigan State Penn State game, and just see kind of what Michigan State is all about. Now let's go back to the Washington Huskies, though. That first long pass in the open drive to McMillan was a beautiful pass. And that's what I'm talking about. That perfect spiral, that beautiful magic that Michael Penix Jr. has. And then he threw 3 touchdowns to Jalen Polk. It was beautiful to see. McMillan almost had a touchdown. It's just something that what the transfer portal really brought to us, and I think we're in a huge era where transfers really have taken place, is that it gave us these kind of players who in Indiana, I don't think he had any recognition or the talent he has in wide receivers. But here in Washington, I think he has the talent. He has the backing from Coach DeBear. And I think just he has that ability to just sling the rock and trust those wide receivers and know that they're going to catch it. And he puts it in the exact spot it needs to be. I think we need to watch out for Penix Jr. I think he's going to be a big name coming up in these next few games. I think it's going to be really interesting to see exactly what happens with Washington, though. Washington has a really interesting game coming up. This was the first big test, and that was a great showing for them. But can they continue to do what they're doing? And I hope they can. I think it's a very exciting football. Their defense didn't do great. I think they'll work on that. I think that, like I said, this was a test, and they now know what to work on. And I think that if this type of team was on the East Coast, I think it would be talked about so much more. I think it is talked about a little bit because it was a Michigan State team. It's a Big Ten team, and people, it's a Big Ten team. It's on the East Coast. People talk about it. But I think this team should be talked about way more. I truly do. And I'm excited for this. Because at first, when I went to the USC Stanford game, that's all people talked about was USC. And now we have teams like Oregon State. We have teams like Washington State, Washington, even Oregon, even after they got shellacked by Georgia, they're still coming around. I don't know what's going to happen exactly. They beat BYU pretty easily. It was a hurt BYU team. It's hard to say. And we'll get into the top 25 here in a little bit. We'll just at the end of the podcast. But just watch out for this Washington team and watch this Michigan State Golden Gophers game. Because I think it's one to watch on Saturday to see what happens with this Michigan State team. Just keep an eye on these Washington Huskies. I think that with this new coach and with Michael Penix Jr., I think they're going to do great things, not just this year, but in the future. I think that people are going to see, like, this is a team to be at in the Pac-12. USC's going to the Big Ten. I understand that, but people still want to play in the Pac-12, even though they don't get too much TV time. I think there's 3 games on the schedule that are on like major networks right now. Just 3 games, and none of them really start anytime early on the West Coast or East Coast. They all start pretty late on the East Coast. And it's really hard to see that. Washington's at UCLA on Friday. That game is on ESPN, but it's at 10:30 on the East Coast. The Arizona State at USC, also on ESPN on Saturday, 10:30 on the East Coast. Stanford at Oregon, 11 on the East Coast on Fox Sports 1. Everything else is on the Pac-12 network. The Oregon State at Utah game, which is probably going to be the bigger game for the Pac-12. It's on at 11 a.m. Pacific, which is 12-1, 2 East Coast, but it's on the Pac-12 network. Who's going to watch that? The Arizona State USC, that'll be interesting. That will be interesting. And why is that interesting? If you haven't heard, Herm Edwards is out of there. And I want to get into that real quick because it's very interesting at what's going on. If you haven't heard, Herm Edwards is out. And it's really interesting, not just because he didn't really have a bad season. Yeah, he started 1-2, but he was 26-20 and never had a losing season the past couple years. But something obviously wasn't clicking. And what's really interesting is this came out through The Athletic, and there's some reports else going around that there's some loose lips. And I'm going to read exactly what The Athletic said. An opposing coach recently told The Athletic that it wasn't hard to get intel on this season's team because some within the Arizona State Athletics, they wanted a coaching change. And that's so crazy to me. And we haven't, this isn't the first coaching coup we've seen, but it's so interesting that in his 4th year at Arizona State didn't have a losing season. He's 26-20, that they didn't want him there anymore. Not that he was doing great things or amazing things, but they wanted him out so bad they were telling other teams about their current Arizona State team. That just blows my mind. And I don't know who that's on. If that's on Arizona State, athletic director, and people kind of in the background, or if that's on Herm himself. Coach Edwards, I feel like what the problem is that he just doesn't click. He didn't click with the team. He didn't click with the other coaches. And you'll see in other coaching, I was going to say universes, but worlds. I'm going to go with one that I know. Dave Clawson, when he was at Bowling Green, when he went to Wake Forest, he took the whole coaching staff with him because they connected, they created something, and they knew what they were doing. In 4 years, Herm Edwards couldn't do that. He couldn't get a staff to rally around him, a team to rally around him. I think that's a big problem. And I get why he's out. But it's so shocking to me still that someone just blabbed and told about just so he would lose. Do you not have pride in your school? You wanted him out that bad that you were okay with losing? I don't get it. I would want that guy out too. The guy who talked, I want him out. Because he doesn't care about winning, obviously. Work with Coach Edwards. Work with Herm Edwards. Don't just make the Sun Devils lose because you're just not a fan of the coach. That's ridiculous. That's crazy to me. You're lying down and saying, I'll let us lose just so we can have some change. He wasn't a terrible coach, 26-20. But you want him out so bad that you're willing to lose. Tell the other teams your schemes, your team plays, your team stats, who you have on your team. Just so you could lose and get a different coach. That's crazy to me. Other coaching hot seats, Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. They beat Miami. But I don't know if it's really them beating Miami. Miami, I felt like, beat themselves. The Aggies made some smart moves. And I think what really helped Jimbo is suspending those players. A few players, wide receivers, and other players, they broke curfew. So Jimbo suspended him for a game. He brought Max Johnson as a starter. I think that helped show that Jimbo still cared about this team. He could have done nothing. It's such a small thing, right? Curfew. He could have made him run laps, run hills, whatever. But he suspended him. And I think that's the important part here. He made changes, made decisions that really helped the team show his leadership. Do I think this win does anything for him? No. I don't think he's really in the hot seat. He's close, though. I think they spent too much money on him, on this facilities, on this team. The best recruiting class this season in history in the world. I don't know, but they're not doing much with it right now. We had Max Johnson come from LSU. What did you do with him for the first couple games? Nothing. He really didn't do anything this game though either. They just couldn't get it going, and they still continue they're not able to get it going. I don't think. Max Johnson, 140 yards and a touchdown. That's not it. That's not enough. They only won by 8, and the reason they won by 8 is because of that muffed punt. If Miami held on to that, Miami wins easily. If you look at the box score, let me read these stats to you. Let me see. All right. 217 yards passing for Miami. 175 yards on the ground. 27 first downs, 3 punts, 77 plays. Texas A&M had 6 punts. Less plays, less first downs. By all means, Miami, if you look at the box score, they won. If you don't even look at the score and look at the box score, easily, Miami won. Final score was 17-9. Texas A&M has a lot more to do here. They need to do more. They are going to get trampled in the SEC. Once conference play starts, they're screwed. And that's this weekend. They play Arkansas. Number 10 Arkansas. Luckily, it's in Texas. It's in Arlington, Texas. Luckily, it's in Texas. They get Arkansas at Mississippi State, which we'll have to see how Mississippi State is. They lost to LSU. And I don't know. It's at Mississippi State, so it could go either way. At Alabama, bye week. Out South Carolina, could be an easy win. Ole Miss, Florida, at Auburn, UMass, LSU. I tweeted out earlier in the year, a couple weeks ago, Jimbo Fisher better be careful because it's not looking good for him. Fisher in his first 4 seasons, 34-14. Coach Sumlin, 36-16. Sumlin was out the door. But is Jimbo going to stay just because of his name? Possible. But losing to Appalachian State, tough. That's a tough pill to swallow. But the fact that they can still go 4-8 this season, that's not good. That is not good. But again, it's a recruiting class. They're not all going to be stars right away. You have to mold them, shape them. So I think they keep him even if he goes 4-8, to be honest. Okay, let's see where we have possible wins they can pick up. They can pick up the Florida win. Mississippi State, they could win. South Carolina. Auburn. UMass. They could beat LSU. LSU starting to look a little better though. I just don't know what's going to happen with them. I think that's what's scary is you just don't know. Who are they? Who is Texas A&M right now? And it's hard to say because we just don't know. Hopefully they go into this Arkansas game prepared and ready. And we'll see. We'll truly see who they are. And I'm excited to see the Florida-Tennessee game too. I think that right now, those are the two important games in the SEC. Arkansas 3-0 versus a 2-1 Texas A&M. Tennessee 3-0 versus a 2-1 Florida team. Really, those games could go either way. Both those games. Honestly, though, Anthony Richardson, if we want to get into that real quick, looks abysmal. Florida did not look good against South Florida. Beat them by 3. Utah, which makes Utah, I feel, look bad. A Kentucky team who's ranked 8th, who I think is honestly the 3rd best team in the SEC right now. Georgia, Alabama, Kentucky. This Tennessee-Florida game will be interesting. I don't think that Florida's going to win. I think Florida's going to have a lot of tough games. Luckily, they have Eastern Washington and Mizzou, but then they have LSU, Georgia, Texas A&M. That Florida squad, Anthony Richardson, get it together. Get it together fast. Because it's coming at you, and it's not pretty. Speaking of other coaches in the SEC that are maybe on the hot seat, that Penn State-Auburn game, huh? Let's talk about stats real quick. Penn State, 477 total yards. Auburn, 415. Passing yards, 232. 296 for Auburn. Rushing yards, 245. 119 for Auburn. Still not bad. Here's the kicker, though. 0 turnovers for Penn State. 4 turnovers for Auburn. Early in the first quarter, there was a scramble. Let's talk about Sean Clifford. There was a scramble by Sean Clifford, and he got rocked. He got his lights flashed. He got lit up. But he hops back up and goes for that QB sneak. They didn't make it, absolutely. Auburn did a good job stopping that, but it showed, I think, his team, and I think that what really set Penn State off right there, showed his team, they're not keeping me down. I think Sean Clifford's super underrated. I don't think he's an amazing quarterback by any means, but if you actually watch what happened, I think his O-line really cares about him. They're giving him so much time in the pocket, and I think that he is very commanding of this team, just like Michael Penix Jr. I don't think he's as good as Michael Penix Jr. at all, but he's such a commander on the field. He had 178 passing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 74% completion rate. And he's good. I think this Penn State team is something to fear. Honestly, I think they have a lot to prove, and I think they're proving it. They go into Jordan Hare Stadium and not just win. They picked apart this Auburn team. The defense was lights out. 11 tackles for loss, 6 sacks. Abdul Carter, 1 sack, forced fumble. Curtis Jacobs, 1 sack. Jair Brown, 5 tackles, 1 sack, a forced fumble, and an interception. Give that man a helmet sticker. If we were doing helmet stickers on this podcast, and I might think that we do that man right there. 5 tackles, 1 sack, and a forced fumble, and an interception. Wow. Nick Singleton. It's going to be a household name. That's crazy. Freshman. Currently, 11.1 yards per carry in his first 3 games. 30 carries, 334 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, 11.1 yards per carry. This game, he had 10 rushing attempts, 124 yards, 12.4 per attempt, 2 touchdowns. That man can run. And he has the vision. He doesn't just run fast. He has the vision. He knows what gaps to go through, what cuts to make. And that's what makes a good running back. You look at Auburn. First time they ever hosted a Big Ten team. Tank Bigsby, 9 rushing attempts, 39 yards, 0 touchdowns, 4.3 per attempt. They just couldn't get it going. And I think they didn't even try hard enough. 9 rushing attempts. Yeah, Singleton had 10, but then you have Allen, who had more too. They just didn't try to get it going. I know Harsin said that that's what they should have done. Well, didn't do it. First time Auburn ever hosted a Big Ten team and they get doused. I don't know if they'll ever bring it back. I don't know if they're going to have another Big Ten team come in. TJ Finley, though, it's interesting to see Auburn split their quarterbacks. TJ Finley, 152 yards, 1 interception. Ashford, 144 yards, a touchdown and interception. I just don't know. I'm very, very intrigued to see what this Auburn team does. Last time they had a 3-win season was in 2012 to start it off. After Missouri, they just have such a long stretch of tough opponents. LSU, Georgia, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, and Bama. I know Herm Edwards just got taken out at Arizona State, but keep your eyes on Brian Harsin. 2nd year as coach and is currently 8-8. But after this offseason and the coup that's kind of tried to happen, 18 players and 5 coaches left the program, and a potential 4-8 season coming up. Keep your eyes on that coaching carousel. I don't think it's looking good for Brian Harsin. I think he's going to be out quick. And there's names going around for different teams, like Herm Edwards to his replacement, the replacement at Nebraska, and then people are already talking about replacement at Auburn, which is crazy. He's not even out yet. People are talking about replacing him. Deion Sanders. Ooh, interesting. Urban Meyer. I don't think he'll go anywhere except a big team, Notre Dame. Maybe Auburn. I don't know if Auburn's a big enough team right now. I don't know if he wants to go to Auburn after this Penn State game. Nebraska. I don't see him going to Nebraska. Urban Meyer, Nebraska. No. But I think in a year or two, he'll come back as a coach. And I think he might go to Notre Dame. That'd be interesting. Right? I don't think Marcus Freeman gets go his first year. I think they give him a year. But it's going to be interesting coming up. Notre Dame has an interesting schedule. Obviously, they're independent school. They don't really have a conference or anything. So they play a lot of interesting people. They play Stanford coming up in a couple games. That should be an easy win. UNLV. But this UNC game this weekend, we'll preview that next episode. And then they got a beat up BYU after that. Syracuse. We'll talk about that here in just a second too. The Cuse, they're looking good. And they got Clemson, Navy, Boston College, and then USC to end it. It'll be interesting. I don't think he'll be out though. I think they like him as a coach. I think that he brings a lot as a former Ohio State Buckeye. But I just feel like that even if they have a losing season, he's not out. It's his first year ever coaching too. It's not like it was his first year on the job where like he came from another school. It's his first year coaching really as a head coach ever. But it's not looking good. Lose to Marshall, beat Cal by a touchdown, and then they got a good North Carolina team. I don't know. It'll be interesting. But speaking of Syracuse, we just kind of hit on that. Let's look at Syracuse. They beat Louisville 31-7. 31-7. And Louisville almost beat Florida State. That's the hard thing about college football, right? You kind of be like, oh wow, this team beat Ohio State beat Notre Dame 21-10. But then Marshall beats Notre Dame. Does that make Ohio State look worse? It's hard to say. Because you could go that route. But they're still getting their footing. It's only about to be week 4. They're still kind of getting their footing. So it's hard to say that this team's better than this team. And honestly, on any given weekend, anything can happen. Any given Sunday, any given Thursday, Friday, whatever day the game is, anything can happen. We just saw Appalachian State beat Texas A&amp. Anything can happen. We'll talk about Appalachian State here in just a second. But let's go back to the Syracuse team. 31-7 against Louisville. 48-14 against UConn. And then 32-9 against Purdue. Purdue had a good game. That was a nice game to watch. That was a fun game to watch. That game, that's college football. That's that pageantry, that excitement, that back and forth. It was beautiful. It was so fun to watch. Then they got Virginia. Should be a pretty decent game. Then they got Wagner. Should be a win. NC State, Clemson, Notre Dame, Pitt, Florida State, Wake Forest, Boston College. That run after Wagner, that's a tough run. Syracuse has a tougher schedule than some other teams, which is crazy to me, that are in the top 10. And they look good. A college basketball team that looks good. I think there's a couple more of those out there. Kentucky, Kansas, Duke. They all look good. But what can they do? You know? Louisville, UConn, Purdue. Those are some pretty decent matchups. And they've come out. Dino Babers showing that he has perfected this team. I don't think anyone can really perfect a team, honestly. But he showed them with Garrett Schrader. He showed them with Gadsden the second. 6 receptions, 112 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's like a day. Schrader, not great stats, but still he got it done. 181 yards, 3 touchdowns. He got an interception in there. But Purdue, Aiden O'Connell, he got the job done almost. That 1 interception, I think, really sealed the deal. 39 for 55, 424 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. That 1 interception got him, really. Aiden O'Connell. That's a name right there. I don't think he's doing anything amazing. He has 1,000 yards. He's 4th. But I think if Purdue was in a different conference, I think they'd have a chance of making big moves. I don't think they're bad. I think they play FAU next. That'll be a fun game to watch. Minnesota, Maryland, Nebraska. They actually, if they would have beat Penn State that first game, they have a pretty easy road to the Big Ten championship, and I still think they do. Penn State, I think, has a tougher schedule. Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio State, Indiana. Let's talk about Indiana. 3-0. I mean, they almost lost to the Hilltoppers, but it's 3-0. They almost lost to Illinois, but 3-0. They play a good Cincinnati team, though. Let's go back to other interesting basketball schools doing well here. You got your Kentucky Wildcats, where, like I said, I think they're the third best team college in the SEC right now. I don't know if Arkansas is better or not. Will Levis, that's a man right there. Will Levis is so interesting right now. I think Will Levis is going to go pretty well in the NFL draft. He only has 882 yards right now, 6 touchdowns. But I think that when he gets put in a situation, that he steps up to the plate. And I think teams will like that. 303 yards against Miami of Ohio, 202 against Florida, 377 yards against Youngstown State. That Florida game, I think he showed up, though. His QBR was only 38.2, but I think he looked good. I think he looked poised. I don't think he looked too rattled. 6'3", 232. I think Will Levis can do well in the future. They got NIU coming out. That should be a pretty, I don't want to say easy, but it's not NIU of the past. But I think they have a good chance. I think the problem is, though, their schedule. They got Ole Miss after this. South Carolina. They have some lulls in here, but that Georgia game to end it, though. I don't know. That Georgia team, that's a whole nother level. That Georgia team, some dogs. Some Georgia Bulldogs. They're doing something, and they're doing it right. Kansas, though. Kansas go crazy. I am shocked by Kansas. They really haven't. They played West Virginia. Is West Virginia good? Houston, though. That Houston game was big. 48-30. That looked good. If they were still in the top 25, it'd look even better. But they got Duke coming up. That would be an interesting game. Battle of the undefeated right there. Yes, sir. But Kansas might have it going on. I am interested to see what Coach Lance does. He's doing work here in Kansas. Duke, again, another, like I said, undefeated basketball school. Smoked Temple. Beat Northwestern. And not like Northwestern's a great team, but it's a Big Ten team. A Big Ten team that beat, Nebraska. Oh. They lost in Southern Illinois? They're not. See, here's the thing. Did that make Nebraska look even worse? I don't know. It was in Ireland, though. I don't know. That's a whole. That's like what I said. It's hard to compare other teams when they lose to another team. You can't really do that. But yet, your body easily wants you to do that. Oh. Texas A&M lost to Appalachian State. Does that mean Miami is worse than Appalachian State? No. I don't think so. I don't know. That would be an interesting matchup. But this Duke squad, interesting, and I love it because I love seeing these new teams build themselves up, get the coaching staff they need, get the players they need, the people behind them, and play a really good game. And that's what's exciting. All right, last thing I want to touch on is the AP poll. I think I got some hot takes here. Georgia number 1, Bama number 2, Ohio State 3, Michigan 4, Clemson 5, Oklahoma 6, USC 7, Kentucky 8, Oklahoma State 9, Arkansas 10. First hot take, Alabama not number 2. Is Ohio State number 2? I honestly don't think so. I think Michigan right now, on paper, looks better than both of them. And that's coming from a former Ohio State fan. But Ohio State, the Toledo Rockets put up 21 points against them. They got to figure that defense out. I think they're going to figure it out against Wisconsin, but they got to figure that defense out. 21 points, Toledo Rockets. That's scary. Bama, though, same thing. Bama not looking great. They got Vanderbilt coming up, but not looking great. Georgia, though, looking dominant. Michigan, though, looking good. I'm excited for Michigan. I think J.J. McCarthy is going to bring a breath of fresh air. And they're going to do... they could go to the playoffs. Penn State right now, I think, has a chance of being number 2 in the Big Ten if Ohio State doesn't get their defense together. Clemson at number 5. This game. We'll preview this game. This game is what I'm excited for. This Wake Forest team against Clemson. I think this is Clemson's true first test. And that's exciting. Because I think Clemson needs to be tested. I think Clemson is... I don't know. I don't want to say overrated, right? Because we haven't seen anything from them. So it's hard to say that they're overrated, right? They recently played LA Tech, Louisiana Tech, played Georgia Tech, and Furman. They haven't had a hard team to play yet until this weekend. We'll get in that on Thursday's episode, though. But Clemson, I don't think they're top 5. I think they're in the top 25, but I don't think they're top 5. I don't even think they're top 10. I put them around 17, maybe. Maybe top 15, number 15. I don't know. I don't think they're top 5 at all. Oklahoma. I wish Oklahoma had a better schedule. I think Oklahoma's looking good. Played UTEP, Kent State, beaten, broken Nebraska team. Now they play Kansas State, TCU. Go Horned Frogs. If Texas can keep doing what they're doing by October 8th, that's going to be a fun and good game to watch. Baylor, Oklahoma State, West Virginia is whatever now. If Kansas is also still doing what they're doing, then they'll schedule shape up. I like Oklahoma at 6. Maybe that they're 5. But I'm excited to see what they're doing. USC at 7. I think USC is so overrated right now. Do they have a Heisman hopeful? Absolutely. Caleb Williams is lights out. I saw that in person. Man, boy is nuts. But are they that good? Their defense is not that great. A not good Stanford team put 28 up. 14. Rice put 14. Fresno State put up 17. This Oregon State team, I think, is going to give them their first big test. Which I think that's what this weekend is about, is getting tested. I think USC is going to get tested. We'll see exactly who they are. I think the top 25 really doesn't matter and doesn't really show you anything. until week 4 and week 5. Kentucky, like I said, I think Kentucky right now could beat USC. Is that crazy? Probably. No. But that's what we're here for. We're talking. Tell me what you think. Oklahoma State at 9. I think that's pretty good. Arkansas at 10. These Hogs are looking good. They didn't look great, though, against Missouri State. That's a good Missouri State team. But we'll see what they can do. Tennessee, North Carolina State. That's another team. That's another team I'm interested to see what they do. North Carolina State, the Wolfpack. Narrowly escaped Texas Tech. Narrowly escaped Texas Tech. But Texas Tech took down Houston. Texas Tech, not as bad as I think people are expecting. But they won by 1 against East Carolina. They play UConn. That should be an easy step. But then they got Clemson, Florida State, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest. It'll be interesting to see NC State. This is why I'm excited for the college football expansion. We haven't even gotten into that. Which, if you want to get into it, we'll get into it. College football expansion, the playoff expansion, love it. So excited for it. It's not only going to make the season more exciting, it's going to make wins more meaningful. And not only that, I think it's going to give teams the ability to recruit. I think we're going to see a big shakeup coming soon. I don't think we're always going to see Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan in the top 4 because of this. Because the landscape is changing. And that's exciting to me. Seeing these teams like NC State, Kentucky, Oklahoma State, Wake Forest, to show what they can do under coaching and decent recruiting. Now that they're going to have good recruiting because they're like, oh, I can actually play in the playoffs and we can maybe get somewhere without having to go to a Power 5 school or a top school. That's exciting. Is there more football to be played and could players get hurt and stuff like that? Absolutely. They always could get hurt. But knowing that there's a chance that recruiting will be better at certain schools because now they have a chance to go to the playoffs and win a championship. Because we know what happens on any given Saturday. Anything can happen. So now anything can happen in those playoffs. With 12 teams, anything can happen. We could see Georgia lose in the first round because of a fluke. And that's exciting to me. People are like, oh, Georgia's the best, though. Why is it exciting that they would lose? Because it's drama. It's like a good TV show, a good movie. And that's what I want in college football. I want excitement. I want people like Georgia to go to Virginia Tech, to go to Ohio State, to go to these schools that have traditions and big schools. Georgia at Penn State, imagine. Georgia at Penn State on a whiteout. I would absolutely be able to, I bet you so much money that Penn State would do a whiteout in the playoffs. If it was a home field advantage, good Lord, that'd be amazing. That's beautiful to see. So I'm excited for the college football expansion. It doesn't happen until 2026, maybe 2024. Which is fine. But I think schools will start recruiting based off of that here soon. And that's exciting to me. I'm excited for you because you get to join me on this ride that is college football. Week 4 coming up. Thursday we'll have a preview show, break down some games. I'm excited though for what's to come. I hope you're excited too, because this road, this journey And if you're listening to this through the whole way, I appreciate you, but this journey is very exciting for me. I'm excited for this college football season because it feels different. It feels different. I don't know what it is. Maybe just because I'm watching it again and I'm talking about it on a podcast, but it feels good. You hate to see teams lose like Texas A&M did, but you'll love to see teams lose like Texas A&M did. And then Appalachian State right after. College game days there. So much pressure. Troy comes in, wants to ruin their day, and almost does. 2 seconds left. A Hail Mary. Let's listen to that call real quick. Before we end the podcast, I just love listening to home run plays being called on the radio by the home team. Let's listen to that.
Everybody back to try to knock one down. 3-man rush. Chase going to step up in the pocket. Sets. Throws high into the air. It's up for grabs. It is juggled. He got it! He got it! It's a touchdown! It's a touchdown! It's a touchdown! Miracle Part 2! It's Miracle Part 2! They did it! Don't give up on this! Oh my gosh! Don't you do it, baby! Don't you give up on these Mountaineers, baby! Yes, sir! Oh my gosh! Yes, sir! What a play! Deflected back into the arms of Christian Horde. And they stormed the field.
God, that's so good. And then to know that the quarterback went and helped his fans, his college students, members of his school storm the field. That's college football, baby, right there. God, I love it. And I love you for liking, commenting, reviewing, sharing with your friends and family, letting me know what I'm doing well, what I can do better. Give feedback. I can take it. Tell me your thoughts. Do you think that Bama should be number 2? Do you think that USC's overrated, Oklahoma's number 6, and Clemson 5? What are you excited for about this coming up college football season? Are you excited for the college football expansion? I know I am. But are you? Tell me why. Tell me what excites you. And I'm excited, to put out some content so we can talk about things like this. Because it's a beautiful thing when a group gets together and discusses a passion like this. If you haven't, make sure to check out episode 0 that came out yesterday. It just kind of explains who I am, why I like this podcast. If you don't know who I am, that'll kind of explain a little bit of it. But I appreciate you for who you are, and never stop being yourself, because you are loved and you matter. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful night, evening, day, morning, whatever time you're listening to this. I hope your day was amazing. I hope your night is just as amazing. Thank you. We'll be back next episode with our preview of week 4.